Welcome to another week of Marvel Rivals Hot Takes. Once again, we are 2 weeks out from the brand new Season 2, so excited for that, but for now, let's see what you guys cooked up in terms of some hot takes for the game. All right, from last week, I actually put a pretty controversial hot take, which is the whole point of these videos, so here we go. Last week, I said my hot take was that I think it's fine to make a new account to play a new role in rank. I firmly believe each role has a different skill set, and you could very well be like a GM strategist, but be a plat duelist, but the game won't be able to define that clearly for you since it's an open queue. And just to be clear, I'm against making an alt account, or aka a true smurf, just to play your main hero and role and then just stomp noobs. And obviously, like, there's a lot of arguments for both sides. I'll give like more of my rationale for a second, but some of these comments are like, what would the glorious king LeBron main? What in the heck? I think LeBron would be a rocket main. With how easy it is to climb, if you're better at the role than you think you will be, then you won't be smurfing for very long at all, honestly. And if you are doing it to play with friends, and you'll just scale together. So I definitely think there's nothing wrong with it. I actually think Marvel Rivals system is not great in doing this. It does still take, like, you will be like in a lower rank for a longer period of time. Overwatch's system was like literally a new placement account, and you could place extremely high because it was a much more aggressive anti-smurf system, which I actually appreciated more, or anti-alternate account. It would actually calibrate you much quicker. Maybe not so much that one. And I want to see some people argue against me for sure. I'm not sure. The idea of playing competitive is to play your best to win. It feels unfair to my teammate by playing a character I'm not good or learning when I could choose someone else to help them win the game. So you're saying if I'm playing on an alternate account, I'm like literally a support main. Like, I play Loki at a very much higher level than, like, you know, playing Groot, for example, which I have like 0 play time on. So you're saying if I'm trying to play, you know, Groot on a new account, it feels strange that like I'm not playing my best hero Loki to help them win. But then again, I'm playing in a different skill bracket, right? Okay, this comment seems a pretty good, solid reasoning against this. People who make new accounts to quote unquote practice their off role should stop being cowards and play on their mains. So what if you end up performing poorly and drop ranks? If you're truly an Eternity top 100 player, you should be skilled enough to climb back up. That could be true if I play it on my main role again. Besides, how do you expect to get better on an off role when you set the game to easy mode, so to speak? Might as well play against bots for the same effect. There's no need for top ranking players to be playing in ranks well below the skill level and ruining the experience for everyone involved. And I understand where this is coming from, because like a person who experiences the smurf who overperforms in those feels really annoying to play with. But like, I think people often forget that it's the same on the opposite end as well. Like, I can't expect to get better on a tank if I play the game in an Eternity lobby with no clear defined calibration for the different role. If I'm suddenly just locking in Groot nonstop, then I'm also ruining the experience for all these players as well, because I'm playing the game with, like, you know, I'm trying to bench press 300 pounds, but like I can only bench press 150 right now. I can't move the weight at all. You know what I mean? I'm getting smoked right now. So there's that argument. This will ruin the experience for people up there as well. And if I fall back down, yes, then maybe I can climb back up on my main. But then I'm also like, I fell down to Celestial 3. Maybe I fell back down to GM2, just locking in tank, trying to learn it. And then once I'm like, all right, I'm done learning this, I'm going to play my main. Now I'm quote unquote smurfing once again in GM2 and breezing through Celestial. Maybe obviously it's not that extreme, but you get the idea, right? So it goes both ways. So where do we truly draw the line? This argument makes sense to me, but then I'm kind of trying to give you the counter argument on the opposite end of the spectrum. I guess some of the benefits of like a fresh alternate account learning a new role is that seriously, the role specific skill development. There are different skills. Like, you will pick up, like, if you're an Eternity top 500 player in one role, you have like an overall baseline, but I think that the line is more distinct for support players who are at this level. I think DPS players who are truly Eternity and top 500 can actually translate a lot easier playing a new role, and then smurfing or making an alt account and playing tank and strategist actually doesn't require as much of a gap. But as a support player who plays at a very different skill level in Overwatch that has very specific role queue skill brackets for the different roles, I can see it. Like anybody who's watched me knows my DPS is actually like way worse, like infinitely worse than my support. But I've seen a lot of DPS players who can flex onto like Illari, or can flex onto Adam Warlock, or play like Doctor Strange, because the skill set translates a lot more. So again, I get it, but like, you know, that's my hot take. I think like you can't win with both ways. You're ruining, whether you ruin the match for the low ranks or ruin the match for the higher ranks, it just depends which crowd you're part of. And the loudest ones tend to be obviously the bigger portion of the population, which is, you know, the lower ranks between bronze to diamond or GM. And like, these are the people who you're hurting, versus like the higher end people that you're hurting, and then people don't feel as much sympathy for these players. But you know, players are players, and like, it just depends how long you spend. I can also spend like 30 games learning Groot from Eternity and D rank to GM2, then spend another 30 games to get it back to Eternity. So that's 60 games, 60 ruining games versus playing a brand new account, starting in bronze. Unfortunately, there's no placements, and then ruining 60 games on the way up to maybe I like stabilize around GM2 as a tank player. That's why to me, I feel it's okay in a sense. You know what I mean? That's fine if you disagree. First one of the week is probably not a hot take, but Storm's ultimate is the most unhealthy damaging ultimate in the game since its only real counter is a defensive ultimate. It has guaranteed value compared to ults like Iron Man's that can be blocked completely by a shield or dodged or reflected, and the fact that it can spawn right on top of healers is bonkers. I disagree. There are ways around it. It just requires very strong abilities, strong cooldowns, or people being very aware of it. So for example, you can out heal it by sitting in like a cloak and dagger bubble with like an invisible woman. You guys just both pocket each other. The other way to survive is like strong cooldowns like Adam Warlock's Soul Bond or like Loki's runes, although that one's a little bit harder because the runes break pretty fast. You can actually triangulate the clones a little bit to kind of like stay on the edge of one when you kind of like have a bunch of them, because Storm has to break all 3 runes, especially if you have all 3, but obviously that's like a very rare scenario. I play a lot of Loki. I think I've only done it like once or twice. Maybe that's not the best example. The other option is to actually shoot or try to kill the Storm as quick as possible. So like there are ways around it. I wouldn't say it's the most unhealthy damaging ult in the game. It's certainly quite annoying, but Storm's play rate has gone down, and I think it's okay because like they nerfed the power level of her outside of the ultimate, so like her poke isn't as strong anymore, which means her ultimate doesn't build as frequent as it did early in season 1. And I think she's at a pretty good spot where like she's like still pretty good in the neutral, and then the ultimate when you do get it is powerful in the right hands, but obviously we have lots of supports in the game that can deal with it and some ways to deal with it outside of it, and I think that's fine the way it is. So I disagree with this one. Next hot take is that this game benefits off of being more of a brawly shooter rather than a pokey game. I find it a complete contrast to Overwatch's more pokey style. I mean, look at the tanks. 70% of them are literal brawlers. I agree. I don't think this is a hot take. This game is like very different than Overwatch in that sense, where again, you're brawling, which means you're inevitably pumping numbers. Like if you look at the damage numbers and the healing numbers compared to Overwatch, which is the closest similarity in terms of like how it plays in that sense. Like when you look at the scoreboard, obviously Overwatch is in a 5v5 mode and you have 6 people here, so more numbers, bigger dopamine hits, but like getting 100k healing isn't out of the picture here. Same with getting like 60,000-70,000 damage if it's a very, very long overtime game, which is unheard of in Overwatch. Even if Overwatch was in a 6v6 format, there's no way it goes that way simply because of the way things don't die. There's the HP pools are a lot bigger than Overwatch's average HP pools. Overwatch is 200 to 250 HP for most heroes. Some DPSs are at 300 like Bastion and stuff, but in Marvel Rivals you got like Black Panther with a bunch of overshield, same with Magic, Mr. Fantastic. All their tanks in the game have a lot, and then the defensive ults are strong. So like, you know, this is definitely a game where it's like, to me, feels a lot more engaging in a sense where you're non-stop fighting and non-stop brawling, which can be exhausting over time. I do find that after 2-3 hours of Rivals, I'm like, damn, like I'm out of breath. Figuratively, I'm out of breath, and I'm like, damn, this is like just a lot of number pumping. And I think that's part of its charm. The only thing right now is that people played it so much, so we're at a little bit of a burnout for a lot of people, and it's the end of the season. But I think it's fine that the game, you know, sticks to the style and keeps it distinct from the other adjacent hero shooters. Hot take, not all difficult to play heroes or characters are difficult because of mechanics. For example, Iron Fist is mechanically easy to play, but it's because of his lack of range. He especially requires good game sense. People who often get frustrated with me for playing a quote-unquote brain-dead character don't realize just how careful I have to be with him. Characters like Psylocke can get quite far on skill alone, but not Iron Fist. The bad Iron Fist on your team feed mostly because they have terrible game sense. I mean, game sense is a broad term that kind of encapsulates your timing, your opportunity capitalization, and like how you adapt to the enemies. And you're right, like when you play a melee-based hero, there's an extra layer you have to think about. Because you're in close proximity, you have to consider how they deal with you at closer range. There's more options that they can use against you, and that's one of the reasons why I don't play melee DPS heroes, because it requires that, and I don't like dealing with that, to be completely honest with you. I do like the in and out ones if I have a chance to, like Psylocke, like Black Panther. If I like mess up my rotation, I zip out of there if I can. Iron Fist feels like you kind of have to commit, although you can do that Dragon Lash kick or whatever. Maybe that's a Ken move from Street Fighter. I don't know. It looks like a Dragon Lash kick to get out of there, but all in all, I do agree, right? Iron Fist's mechanics is just holding the primary fire, which is just a bunch of your punches and figuring out when you have to leave and when you can stay and when to like use your defensive stuff. Honestly, guys, so far these takes are pretty mild. I agree with most of these so far. Where's the really spicy ones? Next, I'm a Luna and Invisible Woman player, but honestly, if for whatever reason I'm ever left to solo support, I usually switch to Rocket. I can't provide burst healing or a defensive ult, but I just won't ever die, and that alone makes him worth it. I'm gonna be completely honest. I actually don't think I've had a solo support or solo healer game in like my 300 plus hours and 1,000 games of Rivals. This is actually crazy to say. I don't know how often you guys experience it, but luckily I've not been in that scenario. But I will say, now that I think about it, I think Rocket actually might be your best solo support, because obviously if you're a solo support, you will not be able to keep everybody up. It's literally impossible, right? So Rocket's Res Beacon, which is something you didn't mention, already kind of like solves one issue for somebody you can't reliably reach. And Rocket's healing has infinite range, and like, you know, you can just fire it across and still heal multiple people. Whereas, you know, Luna, you have to literally find that one person and actually hit them, one person specifically, which is pretty hard to do, especially if you're the solo support and like they're giga diving you, right? But as Rocket, like you said, you have high survivability as well. So you just keep firing your little orbs, and like eventually some of them will bounce and like heal your team enough, and the beacon will solve one person who, you know, ends up inevitably dying. And I think this is actually a good, one of your best options. Like the other high survivability based support is Jeff, but Jeff's heals are a little bit limited. His little healing wave or healing splash water has a max range, and it's impossible to like throw bubbles across. And Jeff is obviously very slippery, but like if you get jumped, you know, you have to like sit in your little fin and like swim around, which means 0 healing. But as Rocket, you dash a few times, but you're still non-stop firing those orbs, which means you can continually provide output. So good take, not a hot take. Still searching for the hottest take here. Next one, my hot take is that for heroes like Scarlet Witch and Cloak, or similar auto/forgiving aim in other games, them having no ammo or need to reload is the cause of more grief than their ability to lock on. Against characters that need to reload, them reloading can offer a window for counterplay, or at least offer the psychological relief of not taking any damage for a bit. While I agree that a reload is like a small window of opportunity and like cuts the DPS quite a bit, because on average you have that little downtime, I still think their reliability to like hit targets, especially hyper mobile targets like a Spider-Man, like going into cloak form and actually terror caping a Spider-Man and actually tickling him down, is actually way more threatening than me as Loki trying to deal with the Spider-Man, because I'm gonna whiff like every single shot. Shooting a air projectile that has a travel time into a moving Spider-Man is infinitely harder on that, and I actually think having a reload time isn't as like big of a deal in these specific scenarios. So I don't know, I still think the hard ability to lock on is more frustrating and harder to deal with than just that brief, than having a reload. It's also hard to calculate when an opponent reloads in a lot of cases, and that doesn't feel as intuitive in some matchups, and like dealing with the non-stop tickle stuff if you like overcommit is kind of annoying when you're playing, you know, mobile heroes that like benefit off of, you know, juking a lot of hit scan shots or projectile shots like your Spider-Mans, like your Black Panthers. But the fact that like these heroes can reliably mess you up is more threatening. Hot take, I appreciate that we're getting new maps pretty frequently now, but not if it means quantity over quality. The recent maps seem to have a lot of bugs and seem like they need more playtesting. As a Squirrel Girl, I can't tell you the amount of times I've landed in spots after using my jump where I became stuck and just couldn't move anymore, and I had to return to spawn. And while playing as the Thing, I run into so many obstacles, quote unquote, that just make him run in places like a tiny curb or brick in the ground or random invisible collision. Even though this game desperately needs more maps, I'd rather them come out less frequently if it means they're well tested. Or, going back to my original hot take many episodes ago, just get rid of like the whole gimmick stuff. All these new maps have this whole reconstruction shit that like inevitably leaves little random debris and collision parts that just are not necessary. And I agree, like I feel like maps, again, like while we are getting more maps, still the weakest part of the game by far, especially some of these weird rewind design stuff. It's too gimmicky and way more frustrating than ever. And like you said, like you have to literally have there's literally an unstuck button when your character gets stuck to send you back to spawn, and that's like so infuriating that that's actually a thing. Next one, maybe a hot take, but I think if they nerf Luna's ultimate, it's gonna be in any way except for the duration, because that would require them to change her dancing animation, which is more work than just tweaking the healing or damage boost numbers or ultimate cost. Isn't the animation looped twice, where she kind of does a thing, you just cut one of the loops, so that is a nice little, you know, like 2 or 3 second cut off of it. But again, I'm not a dev, so maybe I'm wrong on that, but I still think they should cut the duration. And like that seems like something that'd be worth doing if that's the approach they want to do. If they want to slow down the game a little bit and nerf ultimates, I think that's what they should do, to be honest with you, instead of nerfing the numbers. But you might be right, so maybe not a hot take. Hot take, Mr. Fantastic is sleeper broken. If you play him correctly, you rotate your cooldown similar to Orisa and are just an unkillable wall. Additionally, also like Orisa, you deal an unexpectedly high amount of damage. He also has solid peel, and the Invisible Woman team up is good. I disagree. This might be the first quote unquote hot take, but not really that hot. It's just kind of warm, or just kind of cold, excuse me, where like I don't think he's broken by any means. I do think he's a little underrated, but sleeper broken is too much of a stretch for me. But I agree that he can be like really sneakily underrated, sneakily good, somewhat decent damage if you don't respect it, and like obviously very unkillable if you cycle your little big mode and walk around like that a little bit, but he's whatever. Hot take, the design of Spider-Man is so stupid. I can never forgive NetEase for taking the most popular hero in their game and making him by far the hardest character in the game, and also one of the most annoying. Because people love Spider-Man and because he's fun and challenging, everyone and their uncle wants to play him. You can't go a single game in quick play without a Spider-Man in the game. They either throw or make your life hell. Most flyers and supports have horrible matchups into Spider-Man without coordinated support, so it's pretty miserable to 1v1 a Spider-Man every 10 seconds. I don't think he's OP at all, but he has some stupid tools like his uppercut hitbox, auto aim web dash, and the Venom team up. Like Spider-Man has like the high skill ceiling. I think the uppercut hitbox is the only like good take in this big spiel. I think it's totally acceptable for NetEase to make Spider-Man a very fun, challenging, and rewarding hero. The fact that you get either a thrower or like one that's like amazing is like part of the charm of being a very hard to play hero. If you have a high skill ceiling hero, you're gonna have people who are trying to learn him who may suck at first because he's, you know, pretty hard to grasp, but once you do, he's very rewarding in terms of like what he can pull off, and I think that's a pretty good balanced approach. I think honestly he's pretty well designed, a really fun character. Even though I'm a support main and I hate dealing with him, I think it's good for the overall health of the game to have heroes that are like that. You don't want everybody to be super homogenous and easy like Scarlet Witch. Hot take, Vanguard's team up anchor bonus, aka the seasonal buff, is useless. 100 max HP? Why? It doesn't change breakpoints. You're already outside of reach of practically any combo and most of the ults. It just means you feed ult charge faster. Meanwhile, duelists and strategists get both faster ults and more value in ult on top of the baseline impact of damage and heal increase. Aside from Adam, strategist team up anchor bonus is the reason 3 heal is oppressive. All 3 invincibility ult owners get 15% seasonal heal boost for just existing. I mean, this is Marvel Rivals' like signature concept, having team ups and like doing one with an anchor seasonal buff versus no anchor versus the person who like, you know, gets the extra ability. I mean, 100 max HP, these are all just like power creep numbers. Like the support anchor, more healing. And then to scale that appropriately with the tanks or the Vanguards, more HP to make up for it. When you lower everything effectively and remove the anchor bonus, like if Vanguards lose 100 HP and the supports lose the anchor bonus to 15% healing, I think the game is pretty much in the exact same spot. There's less healing, but then there's also less HP to kind of heal and less HP to go through, so it kind of just like brings the power level down, but it's like relative and universal, so nothing would change. So I think it would be more interesting if like instead of an anchor, whoever just picks the quote-unquote current anchor, instead of getting raw stats, they actually get like a very small unique ability that isn't too game-changing, and that would be more interesting to me. But that's up to NetEase to figure it out, you know, especially for season 2. We're gonna get a bunch of new ones, and maybe they revisit their team-up design. Hot take, Scarlet Witch is a very underrated hero. I've seen many tier lists saying she was bad at higher ranks, but as a Scarlet Witch main, I hate acronyms like this. SW, I had to sit there and be like, oh, you're still referencing Scarlet Witch. I was like, Squirrel Whirl, Star Ward. Okay, anyways, her ability to flank and get healers out of position and rotate the defense is very handy. I would somewhat agree that she's slightly underrated and people chalk her up as being bad, but this is like, the tier lists you see are like high-end players where like Scarlet Witch at this point, at that level of play, is pretty much solved. Like her damage output is pretty much fixed, and she can be a little sneaky with how she positions and plays, but she's very solvable at the high levels. It's like if she's flanking, like you know how to deal with it at this level, but like a lot of players don't, especially if she's very crafty for your average player, and then she can get a lot more value than normal. Her ultimate is also like pretty easy to deal with at the high level as well, which means like you're down a DPS ult all the time. Obviously there are times where like you use it appropriately to zone and like scare people off to make them miss position, and it's like you know, something you can capitalize on, but why do that at the high end when you could just play another hero that has a much more impactful DPS ultimate that actually forces abilities to be used, like Psylocke's ultimate. Even though it's like a lot more solvable now and it's less gimmicky, people know how to somewhat deal with it by clumping together and healing as much as they can. It usually forces an ability, forces a Loki lamp, it forces people to clump together, which even if it doesn't get a kill is more valuable than Scarlet Witch's like pure chaos. And pure chaos requires so much setup too if you want it to get so many kills. You're going to expend a strange portal or an invisible woman ult on your team to hide the voice. There's a lot of ways to enable it, but it like costs more resources than what's necessary, which is why people rate her so low on average. But like your average player, totally acceptable, totally fine. And also in ranked solo queue, there will be the occasional Scarlet Witch player who can totally take the hero up to like one above all and stuff. Every hero is one trickable to the highest level in ranked play, but like in pro play, I don't think it'll be seen very much, and too many tier lists are kind of based on that. It'll be only maybe like picked early on for the Magneto's team up for the sword to like break some shit early on, but like to play it the whole match, I don't think that's going to be done anytime soon. Hot take, Rivals will need to make drastic changes in order for the game to not become annoying competitively within a year. Every month or so, we've had a broken character or two that is super annoying to play against. Obviously, they're trying to make all characters be overpowered in some ways like this, but with the pace of the game is releasing characters and the frequency of balance patch makes me worry about the future. How long is it fun to play against these characters, and how long until the ban system stops being enough because one crazy OP character is always available? Yeah, the thing with balance is it's pretty much impossible in any game. There will always be OP heroes and outliers, and luckily the ban system can like self-regulate it to some capacity. I think with the way their release cadence is, they could even benefit from having 3 bans per team, as long as they like round out the roster decent enough with more tanks and supports. Obviously, if there's 6 bans and you ban 6 supports right off the rip, it just so happens that works out. Those are going to be those crazy games where it's like, oh my god, they banned literally almost everything. They need to play such a weird comp. Outside of that, I just think the nature of the game is like not very competitive by nature, and I think anybody who plays like a lot of high-end competitive games can already see that. Like Rivals is a very casual game. With the way these numbers are pumped and like with the way team fights don't necessarily end because there's just so much healing and so much raw output and so much sustain, this is their game, and I think it's totally fine for it to be more of a casual based game than like a hardcore competitive game. I think it will still have its audience if they stick to this niche, but like the take is, if you want it to be truly like a hardcore competitive game, you will have to make some drastic changes for sure. All right, last one of the week. Oh, a decent amount of upvotes. Hot take, I think the simple ultimate designs are actually incredibly healthy for the game. The damage circle or the quote unquote heal circle ultimates are simple by design because the character's base kits are already packed full of complexity. We already have to worry about all the powerful and gimmicky cooldowns from 11 other characters, so making ultimate simple removes a lot of the chaos that would be in a team fight. It's also much easier to swallow avoiding something like an Iron Man or Magneto shooting a ball of death than it is to deal with the nano boosted Genji or a team rushing you with Kiriko ultimate or the half a dozen area denial ultimate. TLDR, complex ultimates worked in Overwatch because the characters were more simple by design, whereas ultimates are much more simple in Rivals because the hero's base kits are already complex enough. You know, that's actually a good way to put it. I didn't really think about it in that way. You're right though. Like I look at all my keybinds, I'm like, damn, I gotta press VC for this. VC, X on my keyboard, R, Q, E, Shift, right click, left click. Like the base kits are pretty damn loaded, you're right. And I actually enjoy that design, and I still think Marvel Rivals could benefit by like slowing down ultimate charge to like let the base kits shine a lot more because they're a lot more complex by nature. So it's just, you know, less frequency of the big powerful circle and more like utilizing all the cool parts of Magic's kit, uppercut, and then like, you know, teleporting, then drop a demon, and then drop a little swinging, spinning slash, and then maneuvering around that more so. Good take actually. Not hot at all. Guys, this week's hot takes were very, very mild. I need somebody with very controversial opinions. And with that, thanks for watching. See you next week.